Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today we proceed with second chapter of static and dynamic, that is static of particle in 2D. And today motivational quote is make your life a masterpiece. Imagine no limitation on what you can be, have or do, by Brian Tracy. Okay, what have you learned in the previous chapter? In the first chapter, you already learned about the scala. They only have magnitude, and vector quantity, they have magnitude and directions. And you also learn about engineering quantities such as length, mass, time, and force, and their unit measurement. And there are 5 basic laws of mechanics that you have learned in the previous chapter. So for this chapter, you will learn about the particle versus rigid body, characteristic of force, definition static of particle, resultant force, free body diagram, and the last one is cable, rope, wire, and pulley. So first, I will explain you on the idealization or model in mechanics. Okay, because in mechanics there are two terms that that usually used, is particle and rigid body. So particle is a body of negligible dimension. We may treat as a body. We may treat a body as a particle when dimensions are irrelevant. So dimensions are irrelevant to the description of its position or the action of force applied to it. And the other term is a rigid body. That is a combination of large number of particles in which all the particles remain at fixed distance from one another before and after application of load. Here, mass and size of bodies are considered when analyzing the force. So for particle, we not consider the mass. Mass and size are not considered. But for rigid body, we consider the mass and size when analyze the force. Okay, for example, for a car here, when we analyze it at S particle, the size of the car is negligible compared to the motion. So we only consider the motion of the car. So we only consider the force and also normal force. And for particle, all force act through the center of the gravity and neglect rotation of center of gravity. So this is the most important, that for particles, they're not consider the rotation. So for rotation, we only learn in the rigid body. So in the rigid body, the point of applications and line of action of force are important. So in the rigid body, we consider where is the force action. So for example here, the force action at the tire of the car. So we will have force and rotation. And rotations and moment about center of gravity are important. So for the particle only consider force. So it's considered normal force, weight, and also the friction force. What else? We also consider the tension. So this is all forces. In the rigid body, we will consider the rotation and moment. So okay, in our in this chapter, and no, in this subject, static and dynamic. Okay, first you will learn about the static and then dynamic. In static, it's also divided into particle and rigid body. So the first part is particle that not consider the rotation, and the second part will consider the rotation. Okay, I hope you understand the difference between particle and rigid body. Okay, so